All right, and what is up, guys? Welcome to another edition of the Fight Forecast. I'm going to be breaking down UFC on ESPN 18. Initially, it was supposed to be Blades versus Lewis. Obviously, got scrapped due to Blades coming down with COVID, like everything else, getting fucked up nowadays. So now we have a replacement main event. It was supposed to be the co-main event, but now it is the main event 5-round fight. We have Anthony Smith versus Clark. So we're just going to be breaking down the fights a little bit here, giving you my opinion on them from a DraftKings and betting perspective. I also did want to mention that I have started my own website, www.dualcoastsports.com. We haven't fully gone live with DFS stuff yet because I'm still working with DFI there. But we will be doing that starting the card of the 12th. So make sure that you do check that website out. And we'll be running a special promotion once we do start pricing pretty soon there. So definitely make sure to check that out for all of your DFS needs, not just UFC, NFL, esports, college football, college basketball, you name it. We're going to be covering it there. But to start off the night here, we got Luke Sanders versus Joseph Manis. Sanders has been very hit or miss in his UFC career so far. Manis somehow won his last fight. Honestly, I'm not quite sure how, because he has only fought one UFC fight. He absorbed more than double the amount of strikes than he threw. He only got like one takedown in the fight. Somehow he won the fight. I don't know. It's one of those stupid judging ones, more than likely. I think this is Sanders' fight to lose, but I mean, I honestly, I don't love either fighter, really, if I'm being completely honest. I wouldn't touch Manis at all. In the 20 lineups that I made, I don't have him in one of my lineups. Sanders, I think, does have the ability to get the finish. He does throw a good amount of strikes. He lands 6.5 strikes per minute, so he does show the ability to get a good amount of significant strikes, which you need in order to be able to score good in DraftKings, MMA, as well as FanDuel. So definitely I would consider putting him in some lineups if you're multi-entering. If you're single entering, probably wouldn't touch either of these fighters. And from a betting perspective, I just don't think this fight is worth it personally. Neither of them really have shown enough to make it worth betting, in my personal opinion. So the next fight we got here, we got Sue Madari versus Malcolm Gordon. Sue is my favorite play of the night when it comes to DraftKings. I think that he is a guy that if you're multi-entering, even if you're single entering, you have to have him in a bunch of your lineups. He is probably the one guy that I would consider must have this slate. He lands over 5 strikes per minute. He only absorbs 2.5 strikes per minute, so you don't have to worry about too much there. The one thing that does concern me a little bit, though, is the fact that he has lost a fair amount of fights via submission, which is what Gordon is good at. Now, Gordon does also pack some power, but he kind of throws it messily. So I think that Sue will be able to get the finish here more than likely. I think that he'll be able to clip him and knock him out. His takedown defense, honestly, not that bad from what I saw on tape. So I am not too worried about Gordon getting him down on the ground. But if somehow Gordon does get him down on the ground, that is definitely something to be concerned about, just due to the fact that Gordon has been very good on the ground when it comes to getting submission victories, and that is some place that Sue has struggled. But I think that you're pretty safe here putting Sue in any of your lineups, put him in your parlays. I think he's a pretty safe pick. Wouldn't bet him outright just because the juice is a little bit too high for this one. He's roughly around negative 300 right now, which, don't get me wrong, it's not horrible, but when you can put him in a parlay with some of the other uh, bigger favorites on this card, like Kamaka, like Persian, um, I think that it's not really worth betting him outright personally when you can get that juice down a little bit and get another fighter in there that more than likely will win fairly easily as well. So the next fight here, another fighter we just mentioned actually, we got Kai Kamaka versus Jonathan Pierce. So Kamaka, he is 9,200. He's the highest priced fighter on this slate now on DraftKings, which I don't know about, honestly. Don't get me wrong, he's a great fighter. He's a great striker. But if you look at his career, he doesn't really get the finish very often, which means that he's going to have to get a lot of significant strikes in order to be able to score enough points to make it worth value. Now, he's absolutely shown the ability to do that. I believe last fight he scored somewhere around the 110 range. So he definitely has shown the ability to be able to get enough significant strikes, get the takedowns, get the knockdowns, to be able to score what you need him to score. But, going into this fight knowing that he very well likely may not get the finish, that is a little bit concerning to me to pay him as the highest price fighter on the slate. I'm not saying I wouldn't, but I think that there's some other fighters right around that price range. You got Sue and a couple other fighters right around his price range, give or take a couple $100, that I maybe would go to a little bit more than him personally, just because of the potential of the finish. On top of that, I mean, this honestly, this fight could be a bloodbath. Both of these guys just like to swing. Pierce, his opponent, absorbs 7.85 strikes per minute, lands 11 strikes per minute. Pierce has very good power. So, I think that this line, honestly, it's a little bit larger than I would like it to be. I definitely do lean Kamaka. I think that he just has the ability and the experience to be able to take this fight and do what he has to do to get the victory. But a guy that strikes that much and that often, that definitely is something that is a little bit concerning when it comes to a fight that very well may go to the decision. Is how is the judge is going to see these significant strikes? But yeah, I would put Pierce if you're multi-entering GPPs. If you're not, I think Kamaka is safe for single entry GPP. Cash, I probably wouldn't play him, honestly. But I mean, you can. He's just not my favorite play of this slate when it comes to cash. Next, we got Rachel Ostovich versus Gina Mazzani. I mean, honestly, neither of these fighters, in my opinion, belong in the UFC. Neither of them really have done much since they've been in the UFC. They haven't looked great at all. I definitely do lean Ostovich for the upset in this fight. I think that she just does a little bit more when it comes to the takedown. Mazzani only has a 20% takedown defense, which, granted, she is moving down in weight class, which could allow her to have a little bit better takedown defense, but that hasn't been proven yet. So, going against a person that lands about 3 takedowns a fight, and now she's fighting someone with a 20% takedown defense, that definitely is a little concerning for Mazzani, that she's just going to be able to get taken down. Neither of these fighters, I think, are very good GPP plays. Personally, I'd lean Ostovich if I had to pick out of the two, but I don't think either of them are very good GPP plays. Osovich, I do like in cash games a lot, just because I think that she will be able to get a couple takedowns. She'll throw enough strikes to get you some points that way, and more than likely win in any decision victory. So, for her price point of, I believe it was $7,600. For $7,600, that's all you can honestly really ask for when it comes to in a cash game. So I definitely do like Osovich a lot when it comes to cash games, as well as betting. Her line has actually gone up some. When I initially betted, it was plus 115. I'm seeing on some sites that Osovich now is as high as, let's see here. Osovich is as high as plus 175. She jumps anywhere from 150 to 175 depending on the site that you're looking at. I honestly may throw a little bit more on Ostovich then, just because that honestly, I think that this is a lot closer fight than the lines are showing. Mazany definitely has fought the more well-known fighters, but she has struggled greatly. So I think that this fight is going to be a little bit closer than the odds show, honestly. Next fight we got Martin Day versus Anderson Dos Santos. This is another fight, honestly, where I don't think either of these fighters belong in the UFC. Neither of them have really shown much since coming to the UFC, especially Dos Santos. He's just looked like absolute garbage. Day just has looked a little bit less garbage, but for 8,800, I don't really see him getting the finish in DraftKings. He's just not that type of fighter. I would lean Day out of the two, but I think he's more so a cash play than a GPP play. He does land 5.39 strikes per minute. Dos Santos absorbs 5.23 strikes per minute, which is almost double the amount that he throws and lands, which is why I think this is Day's fight to lose, honestly. I think that he's just going to throw more strikes, land more strikes, and in something that very well could be a decision-based victory. I think that is his path to victory for sure. Wouldn't bet this fight, though. Neither of these fighters are very good, honestly. It's not worth betting. It's too much of a risk. If you are a degenerate and you have to bet the fight, I'd go Day. He can be found at fairly reasonable odds right now. He is around negative 160 to negative 175, depending on the site. So not horrible odds. Definitely, there's other fights though that I like around those odds that I would bet more likely than this one though. So the next fight we got Ashley Evans Smith versus Norma Viana, or as a lot of sites are actually calling her, Norma Dumont. Whatever you want to call her last name, honestly, she doesn't have a chance in hell in this fight, in my opinion. I just think that Evan Smith is the much better fighter here. Viana is going to go for the takedown, but Smith does have pretty good takedown defense. And on the feet, she's just head and shoulders much better than Viana. So, yeah, I don't think that this is a fight that Viana has a chance to win, honestly. I think that for 8,300, Evan Smith is a great play when it comes to DraftKings on cash or GPP, whichever you prefer, just because of her price. If she does what I expect her to, I think that she'll be able to get a couple takedowns, land enough strikes, and win in a decision-based victory and score 80 to 100 points. So I definitely think that she is a good cash or GPP play on DraftKings. Dumont, her only path to victory or only hope is getting a submission victory. If she can't get that, she isn't going to win. I personally, I don't think that she's going to get that. I think that this is definitely a good bet on Smith as well. When I bet it personally, it was negative 135. It does look like it has jumped up some to about negative 150 now, but I still think that that's very good value for Ashley Evans Smith, and I absolutely would jump on that at negative 150 as well. Throw a couple of units on there. I think that's a very good bet. Next fight we got here, we got Bill Aggio versus Spike Carlisle. This honestly could be a very, very violent fight. Both of these guys just love to strike, love to beat the shit out of each other. This is a fight that I'm looking forward to for sure. At the end of the day, I think that it's Spike's fight to lose, though. He's just a little bit better when it comes to defense, which isn't saying much, but Algio absorbs almost 7.5 strikes per minute. Against a guy like Spike Carlisle who throws hard every single strike, eventually he's going to get clipped, in my opinion. It's just a matter of when. So, yeah, I think that this is definitely Spike's fight to lose. When it comes to DraftKings, though, you honestly, you can play either of these fighters, in my opinion, especially if you're multi-entering a GPP. I'd absolutely sprinkle some Aggio in there just because if the fight does go later into the fight, Spike has shown before that he does not have the best cardio. And if that does happen, I think that Aggio could absolutely finish him. But in the end, I think that this is Spike's fight to lose. Negative 180, it's getting a little high up there. I probably wouldn't bet it if it gets much higher than that. But at negative 180, it's worth a bet. Just because he is the more well-known fighter. He's the more well-polished fighter. And like I said, this other guy, Aggio, he's absorbing 7.5 strikes per minute against a guy like Carlisle. That is not something that you want to do. So I'd lean Spike in this fight, but honestly, DraftKings, complete toss-up. You can go either way, honestly, in my opinion. I have a little more Spike, but I do have some Aggio sprinkled into some of my lineups, which I would suggest. The next fight we got here, we got Miguel Baeza versus Takashi Soto. This is another one of those fights that I'm absolutely looking forward to. I think that this is going to be a very fun fight. Both of these guys have great knockout power, have great striking skills. I do lean Baeza. I think that he's just a little bit faster and has shown a little bit better cardio than Soto. So I do think that this is Baeza's fight to lose, but it's going to be a very close fight, honestly. I think that this is going to be a very fun fight. I'd bet Baeza, I think. Right now, he is getting a little bit high up there. When I suggested him as a bet on my website, I believe he was around the negative 180 range. Now he's roughly around the negative 200 range. That is getting a little bit high. I'd still probably sprinkle a little bit on there, but I wouldn't jump on it if it gets much higher than negative 200. I think Sato, the guy has great knockout ability, and that's, not something that you really want to mess with. I think that Baeza is a lot faster than him, has a lot more striking ability when it comes to outside of just strict power. So I think that he will be able to kind of, do what he has to do to move in and out, get the strikes, and clip him or get a decision victory. When it comes to DraftKings, I think you can play either of these guys, kind of like the Spike fight. I think that this is a fight that you want to sprinkle into your lineups either way, especially if you're multi-entering Soto at his price point, he's definitely worth sprinkling in as an underdog because he is absolutely a live underdog. And if he does win, it's going to be by knockout. So if he does win, that's going to be a crap ton of points for you. So I definitely would sprinkle him into some of those lineups if you are multi-entering. But I lean Baeza in this fight for sure. All right, so now we have what ends up being the co-main event of the evening. John Parison versus Parker Porter. This is an ugly fight, honestly. Parker Porter is just not good at all. He does have good power, but outside of that, this is a guy that he just honestly has no reason to be in the UFC, personally, in my opinion. He's certainly fought some well-known fighters in his career. He's fought John Jones when he was younger. Gabriel Gonzaga. He's fought some well-known fighters, but he just never has really shown any actual talent. So yeah, I think that this is a fight that John Parison should absolutely win, but he honestly isn't a great fighter either. I mean, he lands 7 strikes per minute, but he absorbs 5 strikes per minute. Against a guy like Porter does have some good power, so it's not really a fighter that you want to be throwing blows with. I absolutely do think that Parison wins this fight, and I certainly would put him in some parlays as well. But, it's no shooing for sure. Neither of these fighters are amazing. When it comes to DraftKings, I would probably same thing as the last 2 fights. Multi-entering, sprinkle a little bit of each. I definitely would lean Parison more. I wouldn't go very heavy on Porter, but if you're me personally, I normally play 28 lineups or so. I think I have Porter sprinkled in like 3 or 4, just to get a little bit of exposure just in case, because the guy does have good knockout ability. But at the end of the day, do I think that it's going to happen? More than likely not. My guess is that he probably gets finished, probably gets knocked out. But it doesn't hurt to have him sprinkled into a couple lineups just in case, especially if you're multi-entering. So now we have what turns out to be the main event of the evening. Was initially supposed to be the co-main. Like I said earlier, Curtis Blades came down with COVID. So that fight got scrapped, and this fight got promoted up to the main event of the evening. And they're actually keeping it as 5 rounds, which surprised me a little bit. I thought that they would keep it at 3 rounds, which is what Smith and Clark had been training for. But they did announce that they are making it a 5-round main event. That does change things a little bit, because Clark has never been 5 rounds in a main event. Smith has. Now, don't get me wrong. I still think that Clark can win this fight. I still think that he should win this fight. I personally think that Smith is kind of over the hill, that he had his little run. And since the Jones fight, he just has not been the same fighter. I think that Clark can get the takedown due to Smith only having a 51% takedown defense. So I definitely think that Clark does have paths to victory. And initially, being a 3-round fight, I did like Clark in this fight. With it being a 5-round fight now, it does worry me a little bit, just because, like I said, Clark has not done that in the past where Smith has. But at the end of the day, I don't think that Smith is, like I said, the same fighter that he used to be. I think that this is Clark's fight to lose, personally. But I would sprinkle either of them into your lineups. I think I have almost 50-50 when it comes to DraftKings. in my lineups, honestly. So I definitely would sprinkle both of these fighters into your lineups however you seem fit. But yeah, when it comes to betting, I'd probably bet Clark. I do have a small bet on Clark. It's not one that I put out, but I think that he absolutely does have a path to victory. So yeah, my pick for that fight is Clark. So that's all we got for today, guys. Short fight slate, 9 fights, where that Blades fight got canceled. 8 p.m. start time, so it's a little bit later of a start time. But yeah, absolutely. Certainly check this out. Check out the bets that I put out on the website. Once again, that's www.dualcoastsports.com, and it's in the header at the bottom of the podcast here, scrolling by. So absolutely do check that out. We're going to be doing some great things on there. I put my bets for the week on there as well. And yeah, let's get that money, guys. Let's bets, DraftKings, let's do it all.